Welcome to That's Why We're Friends.
The podcast where we laugh a lot, talk about real life, and hold on to faith through it all.
We're two friends navigating the oldish season of life and celebrating the kind of friendships that make it all a little easier.
So whether you're feeling overwhelmed, hopeful, or just need a laugh, this podcast is for you.
Pull up a chair and join the conversation.
Sarah.
Hey, Kara.
How's it going?
It's going really well. I'm excited because today's kind of like a big monumental day.
It's a very monumental day, in fact. We have only ever had two men on our show, and they were our spouses.
Yes, they were.
And today...
And still are. They're still our
Well, they
spouses.
still are our spouses. Yeah, but today we get to have
a non-spouse man.
Yeah, but he is the spouse of one of our friends.
Yes, and someone who's already been on the podcast.
Yes, she's been on the podcast, and
so maybe that's
a longtime
how
friend of both our husbands.
Yeah, so if you're a man and you want to be on this podcast, your wife has to either host it or be on it first.
Oh, good. Okay, we just made a new rule.
Yeah,
that
works.
I like that, even though I'm not a rule follower.
Quite the build-up.
So back in the fall, we had Suzanne Manning on with us. A conversation around just parenting and midlife, and we got to be introduced to the Crazy Cool Family ministry and everything that they've got going on. And so now with June, and we're talking about the father's heart and fatherhood and other aspects of parenting. And so we decided to have Mr. Manning, Suzanne's husband, Don.
Oh, I feel so old.
Mr. Manning.
Don Manning. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes.
Super excited. You guys are great friends, and so great. Very excited to be here today.
Yeah,
awesome.
We're excited too.
Well, just kind of a recap. You and your wife, Suzanne, head up an incredible ministry that is, there's so many aspects to it, and we'll let you talk about that, but Crazy Cool Family, which exists to just help parents navigate the journey of parenting. And I love, recently I heard you talk about the whole idea of Crazy Cool Family, because God stories and doing life with God is just, it's crazy awesome. And so Crazy Cool Family. So you and Suzanne aren't coming at this from like a theoretical place. You have a lot of experience with 7 kids, and now just recently 11 grandbabies, I think by the time this airs, which is just exciting. And you guys just graduated into a place where you don't have any more teenagers and nobody at home. So you guys are in that big transition after a long, long time. Your ministry is equipping parents in every season and stage of parenting. And we just love that you're passionate about that and how you guys reach people through Playbook, which we'll let you talk about, and the podcast and just all the different resources that you guys have. So we're excited to have you, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, we threw theory out the window like decades ago, it feels like, so just parenting is super, and there is, parenting and being a dad is, I wrote an article that's going to be by this time this airs will be published in a local newspaper, just talking about intentionality, that so often is, even though we do throw theory out the window, it's super practical, being intentional. And that's really what we love to promote to parents. It was what was shown to us. We don't show anything to parents that wasn't shown to us. All we're doing is packaging and passing along what God's word says, what people have said. So it's not like we're some experts. We do have a lot of experience, Sarah, as you've mentioned, but really it's just, what do we learn? So then we can pass it along. And one of the things that happened in our lives is, I believe God gave us, and I know y'all's families too are the same way. God has given us the gift of family. And it really is a gift. It's something that is blessed by God. Yes, we did things to help it along and everybody did their part, but it really is the grace of God that we have, the gift of family that we have. And we just thought years ago, how do we pass that along? How do we pass that gift along to others? And so that's what we do. We just try to follow God's lead in helping others do that. So
that's amazing. You told us earlier that your last one just turned 20. So you had 23 years of teenagers.
That's right.
Is a lot. I mean, I think I had 7 and I was like pulling all my hair out. But, 23 years is a long time to have teenagers in the house. What do you feel like, though, was the most beneficial thing in those years for you and your growth spiritually?
Well, I think that, as you know, guys, teenagers refine you because they push, they can push your buttons. Think about it. I have four girls first and then three sons. So at one time, it was me and five women in my house. And so, and honestly, even pre-teenage, it's one of the things that really changed me as a person and as a dad is it was me and my four daughters and my wife, and I didn't understand any of them. And I was really trying hard to be a good dad. I mean, I was really doing my best. We've been involved at our church for many years, all the things where I'm not a deadbeat dad, but I felt like I was failing at it. And because they were fearful of me, or I was concerned about how they were going to turn out. They were insecurities and all the things. As we go into the teenage years, I just felt like that I needed it. It really changed me, and I started really studying God's word and studying parenting literature because I'm like, I got to figure out how to win this game. And honestly, I was looking out ahead of me and seeing a lot of parents working hard at parenting and not getting the results they wanted. The disconnect with the kids, they're not talking to me, not following God, whatever it is. And I'm like, wow, we're going to work really, really hard at this job and I'm going to get that. And so it really changed me from the inside of, I can't hold on to what I believe is right. I got to really figure out what is the best way to first parent daughters and then sons. And so that really changed me a lot. And what I found in that, the biggest thing I could do, especially with those girls, was connect with them. That I was focused on protection. I was focused on their achievement. I was focused on controlling their behavior. I was focusing on them obeying. All are great things. When I shifted my focus, and as usual, I always say that my wife was always ahead of me in parenting. And I tell dads a lot, you'll become a student of your wife instead of her critic. You'll be amazed what you learn about family. What shifted in the teenage years, one of the things, my respect for my wife increased dramatically in the second decade of our marriage. And I started watching her interact with the kids, and I'm like, you know what? That works. My way doesn't work. Her way lines up with what God says because I was being introduced to grace from the Father, and I'm like, what if I parented more in terms of, now again, not losing control, but to parent? What if we got control through connection? And what if they followed us because they wanted to instead of because they had to? What would that look like? And so that really, they're during the teenage years, that's where I really learned a lot about connection. And I learned a lot about where God's heart is for us and for our family. So long answer, but
No, it's great. What I love about that is just the humility that it took for you to decide to go and resource yourself and decide, a gap and deciding you wanted to find out how to fill that gap. And what's so cool about that is now seeing it be full circle, that now you guys are a resource where a dad who, or a mom finds themselves in that situation, you guys have now created something that can do what you found in that season. So I just love the symmetry of that, how it's come full circle. But it takes that humility and choosing to maybe overcome our fears, because there's a lot of temptation for fear in parenting, especially if we're seeing things that, actually do worry us or make us fearful, or just acknowledging the world that we live in. And so what I love about that is it's the complete opposite. It's that love approach, that connection over fear.
We were doing a parenting class last night, and we these things out to parents, kind of belief change in their heart. And a dad asked, what do I do in connection? How do I give up control? He said, it's scary to me to give up control and I thought, what a great question. What a very, very insightful question. I told him that, but I said, okay, think about Jesus. Jesus took 11 teenagers that were unschooled, and in 3 years, he turned them into world changers that would die for him. Okay. How did he do it? And if you go to John 15, it says, where his last words to him, he says, I no longer call you servants, because the servant doesn't know his master's business. He said, instead, I've called you friends. For everything the Father's made known to me, I've made known to you. Okay. And I asked that dad, I said, was Jesus still their rabbi? And he said, absolutely. I said, you're right, because when Jesus comes back and Peter sees him, after Peter's disowned him or whatever, he doesn't say, hey, buddy, glad you're back. He says, Lord, of course I love you. There's never thought with the disciples that he's not Lord, but he's also their friend.
Yeah.
Actually, friendship and connection enhances authority. It doesn't diminish authority. When it's done well, it actually enhances the authority we have because our kids are more receptive. They are, and it really is true with it's true with a boss relationship. It's true when there is a safety, when there's a security in the relationship. So much of that, it builds confidence in the kids, so many things. And it was revelation to that dad because he thinks, just like I did, that it's all about, I have to control in order to be a good dad. And in reality, control is achieved, but there's different ways to do it.
Wow. I think there's so much just in that. I feel like we need to stop and dissect that entire paragraph.
Yeah. I do want to kind of building on that. How do you then apply that when they're launching into their own lives, whether that is leaving for college or graduating from college and choosing a career? Because it looks different, but those feelings and drives are still the same when it comes to their decisions. And so how does that kind of evolve as they step into those kind of, young adult places?
Yeah, and I think it starts when Suzanne always says that when a kid is about 12 or 13, there's a bridge they stand on. And in one way, they want to be an adult. But on the other hand, they're looking back and they're still a child. And so when they're in those years, we are navigating. And so we're helping them walk off that bridge into adulthood, but really realizing that there's still a little boy or a little girl in there. And it really isn't all of us all the time. And they're just wanting to know, are you safe? Can I talk to you? I don't know if what I'm thinking is right. I'm confused. And, teenagers are just 2-year-olds with freedoms. Because
Oh, no.
they go back to being nocturnal. They go back to, all the things, and they're going through hormones and emotions. And so, are we being safe to navigate them? Because they're in our home at that time. So if we talk to them, if we let them ask the questions, and so they're also owning their own faith. And that really doesn't happen until the teenage years. We want them to own it at 7, but they're not really ready for it most of the time. But they're starting to really own their own belief systems. And so the goal is that we navigate through them in the teenage years, and it may go into the college years, but the key is we have that connection and that safe because they need to have their own beliefs. It can't be our beliefs. It is when they're younger. One of the things I tell dads a lot is, and I'm going to go off on a tangent just here for a second, but that fathers impart identity. So a father gives a child identity. And if you think about it, when a child is young, their vision of God is their daddy. Okay? So if a dad will impart identity to that child as a young child, this is who you are. Realize what God said to Jesus is, this is my son whom I love, in him I'm well pleased. If a dad imparts that, then when that teenager gets to where they're transferring that identity to God, they look at God and they go, of course God loves me. My daddy loves me. And my daddy listens to me. And my daddy's for me. Otherwise, if we don't do that, then in those teenage years, that child says, I can never please God because I can never please my daddy. Or, and the mom's in there too, but it's the dad, podcast, if you will. And so then you're assessing, do I know them? Do I know God? Do I know their relationship with God? Do I trust them? And so that dictates how much freedom they can get. Okay? One of the things we said to our kids all throughout their lives is with responsibility comes freedom. That I want to give you freedom. I want to give you everything that God has for you. And what is freedom? It's not the right to do whatever we want. It's the power to do what is right.
Right.
So I want to give you freedom. I want you to walk in God's. I don't want, so many parents, even though their kids are making A's on the test, they're going to get on to them for making that 1B. I want everything for you, and I want to be your cheerleader. I want to be your champion. What are you doing to take responsibility for that? And the more responsibility you take, the more freedom I can give you. But I'm also need to be a parent. And so if you're not exercising responsibility, then I have to come in and help you and be responsible for you. And you don't like that. So why don't you do it?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. How do this podcast is a podcast for oldish women. I mean, and you now. But
Oldish parents.
obviously, a lot of our listeners are in our age group. So we have a lot of people that, their kids are in college or beyond college. And you currently sit with all of that. You have in college and beyond college. So talk about parenting as a dad, kids that are in that college season.
Yeah. First of all, teenagers, college, past post college, it's so fun. I
Yeah.
mean, our kids are actually interesting.
Mhm.
I mean, they really are fascinating. And I think so often we're so concerned about what they're becoming that we don't just enjoy who they are.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think that's so important in this season. I love my kids. I want to tell parents. There's a lot of parents I see as I go across the country, especially men that are mourning broken kid relationships.
Mhm.
And there's distrust and the things of the past. Most of us aren't very good at relationships in general.
Mhm.
I ask this to groups all the time. I said, parents, who wants an outstanding relationship with your child? I mean, a great relationship. Who would like that with every one of your children? And of course, everyone raises their hand. And I said, well, why is it then that if we get to the end of the road, only 20% of us will have that? Every relationship is repairable. There's a guy named Dan Siegel wrote a book, The Whole Brain Child, and he talks about how within our brains, if we work better, me works better. It's saying that when we are in relationships, then our brains just work better. And I believe that I'll go to heaven. I'll ask God about this to see if I'm right, but is that God hardwired the parent-child DNA.
Mhm.
There is that's why kids, even though their dad has been horrible to them, they seek the dad out or whatever. There is just this. And so, parents, if you become different, there is a high likelihood your kids will be better connected to you. But most parents see that as, oh my goodness, you're saying it's all my fault. Yeah, you can look at it that way, but I look at it as no, if I'll do what's right, I have a great opportunity to restore and to build a great relationship with my child. God has made it to where we as parents have the opportunity at every age to go have a great relationship with our children.
So I love what you're saying is that even if, let's say my kid is 20 something and I feel like it hasn't been great up until today I can start at that
100%.
connection place
Yeah.
to create that relationship that I'm longing for.
Mhm.
It's
Now,
never
it's
too late.
also going to take time. I remember a guy came to me many years ago for marriage advice, and I told him some things to do, and he came back a month later, and he's like, "It's not working." And I go, "How long you been trying this?" And he said, "A month." I said, "How long you been married?" And he said, 14 years. I said, "Okay." But if somebody's willing to learn and they're willing to put the time in over time, there is a high likelihood of a significant difference in that relationship.
Yeah.
Whether
Good. Well, and we should have said this at the beginning, but I'll say it now. If you are an oldish woman listening right now, you should stop this podcast and go find your oldish husband and
Yes.
start it back at the beginning, because I just think this is such good information for both moms and dads. But it sounds like to me, everything you've said thus far is it really brings us to one place. And that is what Sarah touched on earlier, is just that humility piece of like, yes, you're the parent, but you don't know everything. And so it's just that humility of being willing to go to God and say, I don't really know what I'm doing here. Help me have just that relationship with my child and that connection, whether they're four or whether, they're an adult and out of college and married and have children. Like at any point, it's that just being willing to humble yourself and say, I don't exactly know how to make this connection and make this relationship right. and redeem it, but I'm willing to put in the work to do that. And so I guess that then in turn would lead to, how do parents of adult children who know that their relationship thus far hasn't really been great go back
Right.
to the child and apologize and start over?
If you look through the New Testament, you feel like God gives me certain themes. One of those words that came out one time was how often he talks about forgiveness. And he says, if you will forgive, and in effect, if you'll ask for forgiveness and be a forgiving person, then it releases so much in relationships and in our favor with God. So often he says, if you don't forgive others, I can't forgive you. It's almost like we keep a barrier up, and we keep a wedge in the relationship that is our choice. One of the things I tell my kids is, I never have the right to yell at you. It's no matter what, I don't care what you do to me and how bad you've been or whatever, I never have the right to yell at you. And if I do, no matter what's happened, it's my job to come ask your forgiveness for yelling at you. It doesn't mean I can't be firm. It doesn't mean I can't speak my opinion. When Jesus's form of love was going to the cross, what are we willing to do for the betterment of our kids? And that's one thing, is just being willing to forgive and to, if we're 10% wrong, we apologize for our 10%.
Yeah.
The other thing is, and I think, Sarah, this alludes to your question, is what if instead of telling them what to do, especially at adult children, we have to make it their idea? And it's actually a fun game to play once you it's
Good.
how do
After this podcast, I have some very specific questions for you.
So, and again, just like the relationship, these things are messy and they take time. And I'll give you a little illustration that I think, and this is a Suzanne illustration. She should be with me on the podcast because I keep telling all the things that she's saying. But if you can see it, and I don't know for the audio people, I'll try to describe it. But so often we are on this side of the argument, and the kids are here. And if you look at, then God is behind the parent. So we're trying to help our kids see God. Okay. We want them to see God, but instead all they can see is us. And we are telling them what to do. And it looks like this to them. And either they do this, and so this becomes happening, or they want to do this. But because all they want to do, they really want our approval, even at the adult ages. And so all they're saying is, mom's disappointed in me, or dad is disappointed in me. Dad doesn't like me. I never do enough for dad. How do I stop him from talking and go here? Okay. Instead, what if we do this? We come alongside them and we put our arm around them and we say, hey, where do you think God is in this? What do you think is best for you? How can we see God together? So, and now we have taken away, we're actually a hindrance to seeing God because of our attitudes and our ways we're approaching them and the way they're perceiving us. And what if we move over and say, hey, let's see this together? And that's the messy part, and it takes a long time sometimes. And we pray for them as well, and we commit. That's another thing. We're just, how much are we really praying? Do we really believe that the spiritual realm, it says that the weapons we fight with are not weapons of this world, but we have divine power to demolish strongholds. Okay, are we doing that? And so what happens is over time, many times, again, just like we're not guaranteed that relationship's going to be pristine, but it's going to improve. Many times what happens as we do that, the child will come to us, usually at an unexpected moment, and say, hey, mom, you know what? I think I'm going to do this. And you're like, really? Oh, wow. I think I've been telling you that for about 8 years, but that's a great idea. And you don't say that, you're like, wow, that's a great idea. I believe God's in that, and I'm excited for you. How can I help you on the journey? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, it goes back to the humility. It goes back to connection, helping, especially as adult kids. I even find, I travel around the country and speak about parenting, and sometimes my kids don't want my parenting advice. I mean, it's just we're wired that way. It needs to be our idea, and then once it's our idea, then we will own it, and there's much better chance that actual change is going to take place.
Well, on that.
You know what it sounds like to me? Back in April, we talked about on this show beholding. We spent a whole month about beholding Jesus. And it sounds like, though, what you're saying is that in our relationships with our kids, and frankly, I think we could carry this over to every relationship in life, is that when we behold Jesus, we also get to come alongside others and help them behold him as well and be able to view his ways as higher than our ways. Is that a good summation?
Yes, and I mean, talking about Jesus, remember when Jesus was, all the people were leaving him because I think he had challenged the Pharisees, if I remember right, and everybody left him. And so he just said to the disciples, "Do you want to leave too?"
Hmm.
Okay, how hard is that as a parent to say, you know what? I can't, stop you from doing what you're doing that's destructive. Jesus knew if they left him, they were going to miss out on so many things that he was going to bring to them.
Hmm.
And that's the way we feel as parents. We're like, oh my goodness, I just see this great life for you, and I see all the things. We do the worst things with the best intentions as parents. I mean, and I always tell parents that all the time. It's like, don't beat yourself up for your intentions, change your methods. Then I think so often we've got to let our kids fail. We've got to be able to release them as adult kids, is what we're talking about, that it's their own life, and we've got to let them make those mistakes. You speak into it, and do we step in sometimes? Yes, but so often it's more about the characteristic of how our relationship is. We're going to be patient with them and let them live their own life.
That's good. We talked about identity at kind of at the beginning, and that's something we do talk about a lot at our church. We're all at the same church. How does it make a difference for you knowing how to be a son, or for us, how to be a daughter to our Father, Heavenly Father? Then how does that influence you of, how to be a father?
Well, one of the things we'll say a lot is the best fathers and mothers are first sons and daughters of the King. And we will also say that the best thing you can do for your family is to present them the healthiest version of you. If I'm an angry person, I'm going to be an angry father. If I am a compassionate person, if I am a humble person, like we've been talking about, then I'm going to be a humble father. And most parenting curriculums focus on changing the kid. Crazy Cool Family, we focus on changing us as parents, because I believe if we change, our kids will change. And if you look at we have a diagram called the Crazy Cool Family House. And at that, we have three commitments of a Crazy Cool Family. And the first one is to pursue God. Pursue God, build relationships, create culture. But the first thing and foremost is we pursue God. And so when a parent comes to me and says, that they're having issues with their kids, the first thing I look at is where that parent's relationship is with God. The same thing I do with me. When I'm having a relationship with my child, I go back and ask the Lord, Lord, am I coming to this with purity? Am I coming to this with humility? What belief needs to be changed in me so that I'm going to present myself as the best dad possible? And many times that's a big struggle in my heart, because I'm angry and I'm frustrated, and I want them to just listen to me. And it's so quick. If you'll just do what I say, then everything would be much better in your life. That's what I want to say to them.
Hmm.
All you got to do is it's not hard. I mean, all those things I want to say to them. This is not a difficult problem. I know the answer. Here's one, two, three, and your life will be amazing. That's what I want to say.
Hmm.
That is bringing up something in me that God needs to fix. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but that's why I do think it's super important about how we pursue our own relationship with God.
That's
Yeah,
really
because I
good.
think it's recognizing, even if you are a single parent, you aren't doing it alone,
Mm.
and that we
Oh yeah,
need a
that's good.
father to help us and show
Mm.
us. And when we learn how he parents us in a way, then I think, to your point, that can teach us then how to relate to our own kids, because he is kind and gentle and he does correct us. And there are times where we need that. But the way, his characteristics, the fruit of his spirit, is always how he speaks to us and how he relates to us. And to your point, he has always chosen connection and relationship
Mm,
first and foremost. That's how he always comes to us.
mhm.
I was just thinking, if you really want to be humble, dads, if you really want to be humble, and I've had to do this before, especially with my daughters, before you get on to your daughter, go ask your wife's advice. It can work both ways. I think I'm just talking about it from a dad perspective, but we need to have unity in our marriage. We need to have unity in our parenting. Well, so often I would be really frustrated with one of my daughters, especially in those teenage years, and I would just really want to go off on them. I would ask Suzanne about it, and how I should approach this because it was a real issue. So often we need to know what our kids are thinking.
Mm,
And she was much better. She still is at reading. Oh, this is why this is happening, and it would change the way I did things. And so I think that you're right, Kara. That the one of the best things we can do is to be humble and and let God do the work in our kids' lives. And that also requires faith. So you have to have faith, and that comes back to your relationship with God that you're talking about, Sarah. That if I don't have faith that they're in God's hands and that God is going to do the best for them, then I am going to control
mm,
and I'm going to be harsh. The opposite of faith is fear.
mm.
And so when I parent out of fear, unhealthy fear, because then parent, well, what we should not keep them from running around across, in the road as a 3-year-old. I get it. There's healthy fear, but there's also most of our fear is unhealthy. And the opposite of fear is actually love and looking out for their greater good and letting God work in their lives.
That's good. There's two God-given relationships that are not your children that I want to talk about as your kids grow up. Most of our kids will get married. And
Mm.
so I want to talk about that God-given relationship of being an in-law, and then also, in the natural order, have children. And so that other relationship of being a grandparent. So talk about those two things and how you've seen that role shift a little bit, but also the ability to, I guess, make that role bigger.
Yeah, grandkids are so fun. I mean, let's just skip parenting and let's go right. That's just, yeah, they really are fun. And I really, I love kids. That's obviously we have 7 kids. I was open to that. I'm kind of weird in that way. I just really enjoy that. I think kids give us energy, and I think they're just amazing human beings. I just love watching my little 2-year-old granddaughters and how they're exploring life and learning. And Suzanne says that we're always inputting into their database. They're always taking in the database, and that database is going to shape their belief system. It's going to shape who they are, how they see the world, watching what's going on, how they are experiencing life. Being a grandfather, they call me pops. It's just fun. And one of the things that I think for parents that are in our age, if you will, one of the problems in life as we get older is having energy.
Mm,
And so one of the things I focus on in my life is how I can, again, focusing on me first. That sounds selfish, but it's actually, not, because we're focusing on our health,
mhm,
is how do I bring energy to the table?
mm.
Because 2-year-olds require energy. Now,
Good.
what's different now is what's fascinating. Suzanne and I have talked about this a lot. It comes in waves.
Mhm.
So you don't have the constant thing anymore, but you have 2 or 3 days and it's like really intense. And then it's like quiet. It's like crickets, but so it's a different type of energy. But, what about, our pastor says this, he says, whoever brings hope into the room has the most influence. And it's like, what if you're a pops that brings hope and energy into the room? I told my kids, I said, look, I'm going to be in your life. You can kick me out if you want to, but we're going to be there because I'm not going to be that grandparent that sits in the house by themselves and complains about their kids. We're going to figure, and that my kids live in Arkansas and Florida and Texas, and so we got to drive, and it's inconvenient, and I've had to restructure my life, but it's just a priority. And so, but it needs the energy to do it. And so that's just one thing that I think I've learned. The other, like another thing, and this is where that intentionality comes in. I believe we should be intentional about what we do with our life and family. We have, there's 25 people in our house now. And we're, there's in our extended family. And the over under on grandkids is probably 25. And then they live out of state. So they come in and, Christmas is like a zoo. I feel like the Lord showed me, He's just said, hey, embrace the chaos. One is welcome them anytime and embrace the chaos. And I'm like, that sounds really hard to do, God. And He said, yes, but you will be rewarded for it. And so when they come in, I want to figure out, Suzanne, do both, how to bring energy and life. If I enter their home, how am I bringing energy and life into their home? If they're coming into my home, how am I bringing energy and life into our home at the time? Rather than get up and go, golly, all these people are here, and they're all messing with my stuff, and and all the things that we can do. I want to be the opposite. Now I don't do it great all the time, and I definitely have my share of being grouchy, but if I'm intending to do it differently, then chances are it's going to happen more likely to happen differently. That makes sense?
Yeah, that's great.
And then you talked about the sons-in-laws. It's sons-in-laws and one daughter-in-law right
Okay.
now. I would like to pursue them more, but they're out of state for one thing. I wish that we could do more to like invest in one another in terms of discipleship. But they're the good news is they're all going to church, and so they're being discipled in. And so it's also just hard in that they're young families and they're kind of have the expect. You guys have been trained on this for years. Let's just, be perfect. And they're not. And so we have to deal with those issues and things like that are hard. But I would say with the sons-in-laws, I'm kind of a work in progress with that. I'm figuring out where I want to be because my life has changed too, because I really don't have a real job. I have some businesses that I own and the ministry we do, but so I have a little bit, and the kids are out of the house. So I have a little bit more freedom to pursue them. And so I'm trying to figure that out.
Yeah, that's good.
I love that. As that even just in the season that you're in now, there's still an opportunity for growth and learning. And so I think kind of somewhat what we've talked about this whole time is that's really, and as a disciple, as someone who hopefully is like following Jesus, that we are always learning and seeing areas for growth, not striving, but improvement.
So a couple of years, 2 or 3 years ago, I left my last real job, which was kind of to fully go into the ministry and the businesses that I own. And so for the first time in my life, I didn't have a real job. Nobody told me what to do. I didn't have any place to go. I didn't have anything to do. And I think this speaks to parents in our age group is I thought the problem was everybody else, and I found out the problem was me. The way I'm solving that is putting loose structures into my life and looking at those like I have my businesses, I have the ministry, I have family, I have my personal life. What are my intentions? How are you being intentional in the different areas of your life? So, that comes up, Sarah, when I'm saying, I want to be more intentional with my sons-in-laws. Okay. How does that look? I can look at it and go, wow, I'm failing at this. I should be doing more, and all the things that the enemy can use to beat me up. But what I really think is, hey, I'm gaining. There's a book out there called The Gap and the Gain, and it talks about how we tend to look at the gap where we're versus where we are versus where we think we should be, and therefore we're failing. We beat ourselves up. Instead, what if we look at the gain? What if we look at, I'm going to be intentional and take a step towards that? Some of the things I'm trying to do with my life and my in-laws now.
Yeah,
I love that.
that's good.
So for any parents listening and who aren't familiar with Crazy Cool Family, they don't know anything, where would be the first place that you would send them, kind of the first, entry point for them to get some of these helpful?
Well, the first entry point is crazycoolfamily.com. And what I want to tell, it's kind of like I was talking at the parenting class last night. I said, what you hear at first is many times overwhelming because we don't learn parenting relationships in days and weeks. We learn it in months and years. There's so many things that we have put out there. I mean, you could probably list 20 things we've talked about that, we should do better and all the things, but it's just so much. So, so what we do with Crazy Cool Family is they go to the website and they sign up for a deal called the Playbook. It's right on there on the homepage, and it's a simple email. It's a daily email. Don't be intimidated by a daily email. And if you try it for a couple weeks, you don't like it, don't worry, you won't hurt my feelings by unsubscribing. But try it, and what happens is that what we find is that it's a 2-minute read, but it also is a portal into everything we're going to teach you about family and about relationships. And so we have some materials that you can buy. We call it our family bundle, which is a book and some guidebooks. And through that daily email, we alert you to, okay, this month we're going through this session in the guidebook. And so what I tell parents and parents of every age is, if you will spend with us, with Crazy Cool Family, if you'll spend 2 to 3 hours a month, okay, not a week, and I'm talking about 10 minutes here, 30 minutes here, just because really what you're going to do is, as you do that, the Lord's going to speak to you and you're going to go, wow, I need to be a better listener. Okay, and here's some tools to be a better listener. I'm going to go try that. And then you're going to fail at it, and you're going to get better, gap in the gain, all the things are going to happen. And then the next day you're going to come back and it's going to be like, wow, I need to encourage more or whatever. And so but if you'll do it just the 2 to 3 hours a month here and there within your quiet time, within your, listen to a podcast in your car, whatever it is, you're going to look up, and 2 or 3 years later, you're going to go, wow, this has really impacted me. You might see something in a month, but you're really going to see it in 6 months. You're going to see it in a year, and you're going to watch your relationships with your kids improve, hopefully with your spouse. And you're going to see maybe even, relationships between siblings improve, because those are the things we're going to teach you about, all the dynamics of family.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, the intentionality, like you said, in every area of our life, being a disciple, following Christ, and then how that impacts every role that we have as a spouse, as a parent, as a, business person. And so there's so many pieces that you've dropped in today. I think the humility and the intentionality are two big takeaways for me, because I think those are always going to benefit us, whatever role we're talking about, that we want to steward well, because he's given us all of these different.
And those are great conversations to have with your spouse. Usually it comes from something like this, where someone says, think about this belief change. Okay, there may be a dozen you've heard in the podcast. Take one. Like, for example, many years ago, someone came to us and said, your siblings should be best friends for life. Huh. Suzanne and I were at a conference together, and we looked at each other and like, they are crazy. They are absolutely, we didn't come from that background. We didn't really see it in other families, but wow. We're like, I believe we want to adopt that. We intended to say, I believe we want to adopt that belief system. Okay, that happened to be one. There's other, I would also say that, I intended to be a better husband at date nights. But, I didn't do that as well. And maybe Suzanne and I should have talked about it more, because we talked a whole lot more about siblings being best friends than we talked about our date nights. But then over time, we started to act in that intention, and it became a hallmark of our family that if you want to get in trouble with dad, you're rude to your younger sibling. And you have a responsibility to your younger siblings. And so anyway, bottom line is, over time now, that's a fruit of our family. Our kids really, they not only do they not fight, but they actually invest in one another. And they intentionally, we created a culture in our home to where that was the norm. So, I just encourage the moms and dads that are listening to it to go, what's the one thing, and talk about it with the spouse, because something about talking about it with somebody, I think that's why God gives you your spouse, is then it's like, now it's action oriented. Now there's something you're gonna, it's not the accountability thing. There's an incentive there, and there's an intentionality. It's more when you talk about it with your spouse.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, that's great. Well, this has been just a wonderful conversation.
Yes.
I know I've taken just a lot. I'm going to take a lot away from this. Actually, I get to edit this, so I'm going to be able to take notes because I can't do that sitting here talking to you. But there's just so much in this, and so we really want to encourage people, especially women. If you've listened to this alone, send it to your husband. You're talking to us as a dad, Dawn, but there's so many things I can take away as a mom.
Oh, yeah.
And a mother-in-law and grandmother. So yeah,
Yes.
it's been great.
I think it relates to everyone.
Good.
Yeah.
You guys are blessings to the people that I mean, this is a great podcast. I believe that the people that are this podcast audience, which you said is kind of older, there's so much opportunity we have. I'd say it's our third life. There's the first life is when we grow up and get married. The second life is when we raise our family, and then we have the third life. What are we going to do with that third life? There's more opportunities, there's more choices, and sometimes that can be overwhelming, but it's like I just want to tell everybody, man, God has a great purpose for your third life.
Yeah.
And there's and in this world we live in today, we're so concerned about all the things that are happening, and it's true, but also it's like, what if we look at it differently and say there's so many more opportunities? We have different opportunities than our parents had.
Yes.
And they had different, I mean, my mom and dad had different opportunities than their parents had. They were in the Depression, then my mom and dad, and now we have even AI and all the places we can go and do and be. It is a scary world, but if we embrace it, it becomes God's world.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Beautiful.
Well, the way we end every show is we ask each other or our guest, how are you going to enjoy the life God's given you this week?
It's summer. I'll be outside. I will do, a lot of people, Texas summer, they will be inside. I'll work out outside. I'll go to the park. It's actually cool because nobody else goes. And but anyway, so I will do something in the summer and be outside, be in the water, be somewhere, and because I really enjoy just summers in Texas, and I love being here. Lived here all my life. So my oldest son's in Florida. So sometime this summer we could take a trip there. So that might be that week, but we'll see.
Good. That's great.
I'm with you. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. I want to soak up all the heat and all the sun, and same thing. I think just being from Texas, it, doesn't ever phase me. I mean, I'm sure there's a few days in August, maybe occasionally where, you're over it, but usually that's not till September. Usually, September moving into October, I'm ready. Just more like for the wardrobe change more than anything. But now summer, it's definitely about just relaxing outside. I don't know, it's easier for me to disconnect and relax outside than inside. And so I'm definitely going to be taking advantage of some outside time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you love that too.
I do love that. And we actually have a 2-year-old birthday party outside this weekend.
There you
My
go.
granddaughter's turning 2, and so we'll be outside with the bounce house.
You're going to bring lots of energy.
I'm going to bring lots of energy. Yes. I don't know if they'll let me bounce in the bounce house.
Yeah, you guys
As
are.
much as I get hurt, I probably shouldn't bounce in the bounce house.
That's fair. Be careful
Yeah.
with any knives too.
Knives, I mean, Dawn, I decided to fall off a horse a couple of years ago, but I also get hurt a lot of other ways. I stabbed myself in the hand a couple of months ago, and stitches are a regular part of my life. But yeah, I'll try to not get hurt this weekend, Sarah.
Well, thank you, Dawn, so much.
Yeah.
Tell Suzanne thank you for letting you come and be the Manning part 2. You guys are just a huge blessing to both of our families and so many more. And so thank you for your time and just sharing your wisdom with us and all of our oldish friends.
Well, and you've set a high standard. If we ever have any other men
No,
on
they may not want to at this point.
besides our husbands, I mean, they got to live up to you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you. It's a blessing. I really do. As you guys, just with you guys, we've been a part of the same church for a long time. We've had a lot of great people pour into our lives. So all we really are is the result of that. And so you're talking about where can people be right now, and teachable is, I feel like the one thing that has that we have practiced that has been really good is just being teachable and letting others invest. It's kind of like Will Rogers said, we're all ignorant, it's just on different subjects. So how do we learn, how can we learn from others? And hopefully this has been a learning experience for everyone. And really just remember, all we're doing is just passing along what others have brought to us. And really for you guys, it's like also, what can we pass along? I'm just a result of what people have done in me. And I'm super grateful for those people and also super grateful we get to pass it along. So
That's great.
thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's great.
thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Until next week,
Yeah.
go enjoy the life God's given you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for spending time with us today on That's Why We're Friends.
We hope you laughed, felt encouraged, and are walking away with a little more hope for your day.
If you love this episode, make sure to follow the podcast so you never miss what's next.
And share it with a friend who needs a little encouragement, because that's why we're friends.
Some products or services we mention may be paid promotions. Any advice shared should be confirmed with a qualified professional. Our conversations and opinions are meant for encouragement and entertainment only.